Welcome. My name is John Lin from Healthcare IT Today. I'm the chief editor and founder of Healthcare IT Today, and today we're going to be talking about something pretty interesting, and that's really physician marketing. This is interesting for us at Healthcare IT Today, especially because we have our healthcare marketing community at hitmic.com as well. So I'm excited to have this discussion. It's been one that was pretty interesting, and we've had for probably a decade since Practice Fusion offered their free EHR, but it would be interesting to see where we're at today with it. And today our guest is Dr. Harshit Jain, and he's better known as HJ, I guess, is his international name. It's nice that he has an easier name for me. And he's the founder and CEO of DocCare. Welcome, HJ.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself and DocCare.
Great. Yeah. So first of all, thanks for inviting me here. My name is HJ or Dr. HJ. So I used to be a physician long ago. Last I practiced was internal medicine back in 2006. I was at Northwestern. And that's when I thought if I continue to practice, my neurons will atrophy because I wasn't using them a lot. It was the spinal level, everything driven by protocols, and EHRs were doing majority of the job which a physician is supposed to do. So I thought, if I have to preserve my neurons, let me do something else. So I quit medicine without knowing what will I do. So I did 2 startups. The first one was in the US, in the space of big data and health tech. Simple idea, how do you improve health of people using technology and big data, what is known as disease management now. The second one was back in Asia in the healthcare communication space. I was fascinated by the role that PR plays in changing behavior of people. Ultimately, sold both the businesses, made some monies. Then I still don't know why I moved to advertising. Still trying to find it. I worked with one of the large network agencies in healthcare with Interpublic Group, IPG, which is one of the large holding companies in advertising, in different leadership positions in India, then moving on to Asia Pacific, then relocated to London, then to New York, in different global leadership roles, worked with majority of the big pharma all over the world, great learning experience over a 7-year stint, and did some amazing work, which won, I think, awards and accolades all over the world. Don't think any award in advertising is left which I haven't won. So really feel accomplished from that perspective. Then I kind of quit and founded this company called Doceree to address one of the biggest challenges of pharmaceutical marketing, which is digital. How to tame this beast called digital. And it is not just from a US perspective, but from a global perspective. After working in countries across the globe, I realized that the challenges that brands are facing are kind of similar across, and it needs something really simple to be able to address that. And that's what Doceree is all about.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about it. I mean, I guess we have to address the monkey in the room, and that's COVID-19, of course. So how has COVID-19 impacted that world of physician marketing or in pharma advertising?
So I think it could not have been any better. I really feel bad to say that. But I think COVID-19 provided us the perfect platform to launch our solutions. Pharma brands, which traditionally have used sales reps and events primarily, where the majority of the investments went, were not functional, are still not functional during this COVID time. So they had to depend on digital. So the adoption of digital, all the barriers were lowered to adopt digital. So for us, it couldn't have been any better. We launched in 2 markets during the COVID times, in the US market as well as India market. And both the markets were doing extremely well, with pharmaceutical brands, media agencies kind of welcoming us with open arms.
So is that the death of the pharmaceutical rep? I mean, it's true. With COVID-19, the pharma rep can't go in, and doctors are overwhelmed anyways. They probably aren't, do they want the exposure to a pharma rep that's going around to all these doctors' offices? I don't know. Maybe it's not the death. Is that an overstatement?
It is. So I think it is only, this is an extreme time. It will definitely go away in few months. But I think the digital would become a supplemental media in how pharma would develop their brand plans going forward. This just provided an opportunity to experiment with this media, which was delayed for a long time, right? If you even look at consumer marketing, how it works, right? So about 50% of the budgets go on digital right now, and the rest 50% go on other mediums. For them, it is PVC or print or even on-ground promotions, etc. Even in pharma, it would happen in the same way. So both would work synergistically to bring more efficiencies and effectiveness in the way pharmaceutical brands market their drugs.
Yeah. I haven't heard of a single doctor doing a Zoom call with a pharma rep, which is interesting. Yeah, maybe there have been. So why hasn't the programmatic marketing? Because I think you're right. Programmatic marketing has taken off across so many consumer brands, et cetera. Why hasn't it taken off in pharma advertising like it has in these other industries?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question why it hasn't happened. The way we see it is very scattered currently. If you see the programmatic advertising focused on physician marketing, right? You see a couple of big networks in US like the WebMD group, their properties Medscape or Frontline, or the Haymarket, all these big groups, Helio, they do programmatic advertising, but they are all independent. They're doing only on their platforms, which to
Right.
me, by definition itself, doesn't solve the problem, right? Programmatic, by definition itself, you should be able to reach your target audience on all platforms. Okay? And there aren't many initiatives that has happened across the world that can address this problem, right? Even when I look at these big publisher groups who are doing programmatic advertising, they are only able to serve advertising to their audiences from US. The reality is most of the platforms get visitors from all around the globe. And there is no platform in the world which can help them monetize their audience. Doceree is the only first global platform which is able to aggregate all endemic platforms for programmatic advertising. And we
Yeah.
are seeing cross-country collaborations. Like I told you that we launched in two markets, US and India. Like a lot of Indian doctors, we found out are spending more time on international platforms than the Indian platforms, right? And we then become a channel for Indian advertisers to reach the platforms in US, right? And for US publishers also, it is such a great opportunity that their unutilized inventory, unutilized audience, we're helping them monetize.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you say that. One of my advertisers asked us how much our international audience was, so I just dug into those stats, and I was actually surprised that 15% of our audience was international, even though the main focus of our content is all US based. But a lot of the content is evergreen. If you're talking health IT security, if you're talking health, pharma marketing, it has a lot of international application. But it was just interesting that it was so big. But I mean, that's just the nature of the web, right? I mean, if it's on the internet, anyone can access it. So it's a powerful
If you look
idea.
at medical sites, this number goes as high as 40 to 50%.
Sure. Yeah, and obviously it depends on how someone approaches it, but yeah, it was just amazing that with no effort. I'm at 15%, right, of an international audience, and that's really interesting. I think
Maybe we can help to monetize that.
we probably should grow more of the international. We've debated, but anyway, topic for another day. Now, you guys have started initially with journals, is that right? For most of your programmatic is advertising in journals and things like that. Is that where you're at today as far as where your ads are distributed?
No, so we are expanding the definition of endemic media. So endemic media in US was only restricted to medical journals, right? They're expanding that definition to include all platforms which physicians visit for their professional purposes when they're thinking about a patient, a new drug, a new therapy, right? So we include the medical journal or the medical education sites, the telehealth sites, right, which is becoming the new point of care in most markets. A lot of countries are passing regulations to make electronic prescriptions regulated by law, right? That's a big one. The third is the ERX platforms or EHR platforms, which were the traditional point of care networks. Okay? The fourth one is the physician networking sites like the Doceree or Sermo or a lot of other international sites. Right? The fifth one is the medical association sites from the likes of American Medical Association or American Heart Association. And the fifth one, which is an aggregate of all of them, the assets or the emails that they send out to their member base. Sure. So there is so much inventory if you look at across all these platforms, and it is the right kind of platform when physician is thinking about a new drug, is thinking, wants a solution, right? Is making a decision. That's where we want brands to be present.
Interesting. I like the broad-based view, but let's dive in. I mean, this is why I was interested in this interview, and that was really, pushing the pharma marketing into the EHR and other health IT platforms like telemedicine. How are you approaching that? Is that going to be in the e-prescribing, like you mentioned, or is it going to be other places in the EHR, or how are you approaching, integrating this advertising into the EHR, or, and I guess telemedicine as well?
Yeah. So great. So we are completely HIPAA compliant, right? So we don't touch any patient data at any point of time, right? So through our proprietary identification technology called SPR, we just identify who is this doctor, because our interest is in just finding out this doctor. And for a market like US, it's about precision targeting. But for markets outside of US is to ensure we are regulatory compliant, because no communication by an RX drug can be seen by a person other than a healthcare professional, right? So that's one thing, how we identify. B is, where is the message being communicated? The message being communicated varies with different platforms, how they have integrated. With some it comes on login or logout screens, with some on the profile screens, a lot of them added on the ERX screens. Right? So wherever it doesn't disturb the user experience, and wherever a physician is thinking about those things, right? So we want to make physicians' life easier, to make the communication more intuitive. The more intuitive and more relevant for it is for the doctor, the better returns the brand gets. Right? So that's the kind of artificial intelligence engine we are training, and it'll always be a work in progress. It's not possible to understand a human being, forget a doctor.
That's funny. So, I have to push back a little, I mean, because my readers are going to do this as well, but many doctors don't want to have pharma and really other medical advertising in their EHR, in their e-prescribing. They see that as kind of a conflict or a potential conflict of interest or other, ethical issues. What do you have to say about that for doctors who are like, no, I don't want pharma in my EHR?
Yeah, so we take privacy very seriously, and there are multiple things that we do to ensure that. The first is, when we partner with any platform, whether it's an EHR or telehealth or medical journal, we take the consent table from them, and advertising only goes to doctors who have consented. Right? That's number one check. Number two check, even if at any point of time a physician says, I don't want to see communication from this brand or this company or this category or from any of the brands at all, right? So he always has an option at a top right hand corner to switch that off and make that decision. Right? So it is completely at the will of the physician what he wants to see.
Interesting. I mean, I guess some would say even just, the opportunity to have it there could influence their decision making. It's such a challenging question because many doctors are like, but oh, but I can filter through that, and I'm already getting that info from a pharma rep. I mean, but anyway, it's interesting. Practice Fusion was most notable for doing this, and now they sold to Allscripts, and I don't think they do the pharma advertising anymore. I think once they started charging, they said, okay, now we aren't going to do ads, or at least that's what I think's happened. What do you think? I mean, is it a hindrance to the quality of care to have pharma advertising to the doctor?
So it's very interesting because we also had this as a big question mark in our heads before we started this business. So we did an extensive research with physicians across 17 markets, and it was more of a business research to validate the concept and understand the problems and challenges of different stakeholders. Right? And what we found out was, and this was true across markets, is it's not that physicians don't like advertising. It's that physicians don't like irrelevant advertising. Like, for example, on an EHR platform, if I'm seeing an ad from a toothpaste brand or an automobile brand, this is something which I don't like. But if I am seeing an ad from a pharmaceutical drug, if I am an endocrinologist and I'm seeing an ad of a diabetes drug which I want, I like that. Right? It is similar to how we behave as consumers. Right? It is that pair of sneakers which you wanted to buy on Amazon and how it follows you on Facebook. You don't really mind that. You still click on those communications. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is about removing the unwanted clutter, and you get annoyed when there are so many pop-ups that hinder the experience. We completely don't support those kind of advertising. Right? It's how can we improve the experience of the physician and help him further his practice.
And are these ads just, I mean, are they traditional banner ads, or, I mean, obviously pharma has a lot more regulations around what's required as far as disclosure with an ad and things like that, or, like, is it something that the doctor just sees in passing, or is it really an educational tool that they click on the ad and they're educated on the, so I'm just trying to understand, like, if it's an educational tool, that feels like it hinders the workflow to some extent, unless it's maybe a drug they didn't know or something like that. Anyway, can you talk more
Right.
about format?
Yeah. So see, it comes in different shapes, sizes, formats, etc. Right. So it could be branded, it could be unbranded. Right. The traditional pharma communication that you see is how much can you add in that small little square.
Right.
We're trying to discourage that practice and have little information which is more insightful that can get the attention of the physician, right? Not put everything in there, keeping it regulatory compliant.
Sure.
And US is a much better market, but when you look at other markets, there is a lot that needs to be done. And we are taking a lot of initiatives in working with creative agencies in pushing that boundaries. Right? So the current communication that you see is varied. Right? Sometimes it could be static banners, could be just an image with a brand name or a simple message. Sometimes it could be some kind of animation or a GIF, which kind of keeps going around. There are some videos also that come, but not many that I have come across recently, because most of the communication that was earlier used in the digital space was actually intended for patients.
Mhm.
Very limited communication was actually built on physician insight and solving a doctor's problem. And this was again because such a medium didn't exist where they can target physicians.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think the video makes sense when you're talking about some of the other publications and emails, and where they're there for education. It makes more sense, but it'd probably be a little disruptive in the EHR and telemedicine workflow, right? Yeah, definitely. So, it's interesting to think about this. because are you working with the EHR vendors directly, or are you going to be going to the providers directly? When I started this conversation with your colleague, he talked about how this could be a way for a smaller organization to possibly be able to pay for their EHR, which is not an inexpensive proposition. So can you work with a provider organization directly to add advertising in, or do you need the EHR to really be able to integrate this advertising?
It's a very interesting thing, and we're discovering new use cases every day. Right? Earlier, when we started, we were going to EHR and ERX platforms directly, but with some it was easy. With others, they had to go to the providers to seek permissions for integration. Right? Now we are working on the idea how we want to work with providers directly and kind of help them, especially at this time when we know the entire healthcare delivery model is struggling. This could become an additional source of revenue for them to offset some of the costs. And we are even willing to forego our share till the time we are able to tide through this COVID situation. So I think to answer your question, different models that we are seeing, some working directly with the tech providers, some working with the providers, yeah, these two models.
And does the provider then have to convince the EHR to do some integration, or can you overlay any EHR, or how does the technology work that way?
Most of the providers are actually paying for the EHR. So it's just a custom request that they make to the EHR provider to do that. And our integration is very simple. It just takes between 30 minutes to 2 hours to complete the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm pretty sure my audience is going to cringe a little at the idea of pharma funding these organizations, and I think we'll have. It will be interesting to hear people's response to it, right? And that's why I thought this was such an interesting discussion, because they are struggling. My friend who does a lot of marketing for critical access hospitals, a number of them like that, he said they were stressed before COVID, and now it's hard to see how they're going to survive. There is the struggle, but there is definitely the questions of, should pharma be the one doing the funding of this, right? So I think it's definitely an interesting question. Are there other areas you'll be looking to utilize your platform other than what we've talked about already, or any other thoughts on where are you taking this?
So we want to be extremely focused on the healthcare professional ecosystem. We are looking at expanding from physicians to PA to the entire healthcare professional ecosystem. Want to include pharmacists, the physiotherapists, dietitians in some markets, nurses, the entire healthcare professional network, because all of them are kind of influencers. And apart from physicians, even pharmaceutical brands find it really hard to understand those stakeholders and to even able to communicate to them. And sales rep was always an expensive proposition, so they had to really make a choice who they want to reach out to.
Interesting.
And as the healthcare practice is expanding, right, we are seeing different stakeholders playing important roles. So the influencer things will change as well. Just one point I wanted to add on the communication with which you asked, and which I find it very interesting, is on the video communication. What we have introduced is like how a sales rep comes to doctors in most markets, right? He comes in between two patient visits, right? So we are introducing those video reps in between two patient consults. Right? So it doesn't disturb the experience, and it kind of acts as a break time for physician as well before the next patient enters the virtual room.
It is an interesting way to look at it. It's kind of a virtual doc rep showing up in between patient visits. That's a nice way to look at it. Obviously there's a lot of feelings about pharma reps as well, so I'm sure they'll feel the same way virtually. But no, I think this is some interesting technology. It's interesting to see you working on it, and I'm glad you were able to share with us. For those that maybe want to learn more about DocCare and what you're doing, where can they find more info?
Just log on to www.docare.com and you have everything.
Perfect. So it's a DOCEREE.com, right?
Thank you for doing that for me. Yes. Otherwise, it's always a tongue twister. Okay.
No worries. If they're watching the video only, they can get it. But obviously, when we post it on Healthcare IT Today, we'll link to it as well. But thanks for joining us, Dr. HJ. Appreciate your time. And thanks everyone for watching. If you want to find more great healthcare IT content like this, be sure to check it out at healthcareittoday.com. Thanks, Dr. HJ.
Thanks so much, John. Really nice meeting you.